Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Predictive AI World Forum from SalesChoice. I'm your host, Malay Upadhyay, and I'm joined by our CEO and founder, Dr. Cindy Gordon. And today we will be discussing Living Smart with Heart with Charles Caldwell, who I'll be introducing in just a minute. But before we go in there, what is the Predictive AI World Forum? It's a platform where we have hosted numerous thought leaders and experts in very engaging discussions in the field of AI, sales, and productivity. And I'm sure today promises to be no different. I would like to invite you to visit our website at saleschoice.com/resources to find all these conversations that we have had over the years with some really great individuals. Speaking of which, we are joined together today, as I said, by Charles Caldwell, and he's the CEO of Global Investments. He knows a thing or two about mapping how organizations work, how people work within organizations day to day. And he has a long history in engagement with data and AI. He founded Global Investments back in 1987. What has he been doing since? What is his book about? Who better to take us through that than Charles himself? So let me welcome him in now. Hi, Charles.
Nice to meet you. Nice to be here today.
Nice to meet you.
We picked my birthday, believe it or not.
Oh, well, happy birthday. We did not know that. And it's absolutely wonderful to have you here. Could you give us a quick introduction on yourself in your words?
Yeah, I'm getting into my older years now, but I've been in the information business since about 1984. And I've done, it's just been an evolving lifelong journey, more or less. But I never thought I would end up being in AI. But the work is kind of evolved from you evolve from one stage to the next, and it's been an evolution of technology as well. So it's been a very interesting traveling all over the world, working with all kinds of visionaries and leading executives in all kinds of corporations, and just learning how activity-based research turned out to be really the core of what I do. And it's so much needed today because with AI, essentially what are you doing? You're augmenting, you're taking artificial intelligence to augment human intelligence. And that's partly why I wrote the book, Living Smart with Heart, was that a lot of the information available today, it doesn't go down into the details that executives and managers and just common people need to know to understand AI and what that can mean in their daily lives. So that's kind of where I'm at today.
Awesome. Well, as you rightly said, it is about augmenting human intelligence. People often forget when thinking about AI. But that brings us to now our conversation today, and we'd love to hear more about each of those points. To do that, let me bring in Dr. Cindy Gordon and turn things over to her for the dialogue.
Thanks so much, Malay, and Charles, thanks so much for joining us today. Just want to let everybody know that's on our podcast. I have read the book. It's full of insights and perspectives and gems, I think, to help you execute. One of the things, Charles, I always love to understand and appreciate is what was the motivation for you to write the book? There's always a story. I know, having written 14 books now, it's a lot of work. So what was your catalyst?
It reached the point in my life that I needed to get everything down in writing. What I found is that there's a lack of certain information, and there's so many different, this started, I guess, through my experience of pioneering digital asset management, in that, when you go out and you collect data from hundreds of thousands of knowledge workers, and then you turn that data into models and into there's a whole process and unique methodologies that you use to go through the development of data and of metadata and so forth. So when I learned through that process is that we're just evolving. Technology is constantly changing, and it's actually now become such an integral part of our lives that, in fact, today it's hard to distinguish kind of between home and work. I mean, everything's kind of melding together. So what we learned, through that process was working with, the big guys, the Microsofts and IBMs and Apples, but also with a lot of little solution providers. We were collecting data. We found that there was a real need for, in order for people to understand information and the impact it has on an organization, it was really important to be able to model it so you can then, build it into the systems and applications in a business so they can help run operations. And now with AI coming online, it's even more important. So the book I just constantly was being asked questions that I felt was really important to write them down and put them into into context. I actually started the book probably 15 years ago, but just I've been so busy I never finished it. And so it evolved, and going through the process yourself, writing a book, it's quite complex and you go through a lot of reiterations. But in the end, I was happy to come out with this first reference resource, which I believe can be used now by teachers and students and executives all over the world as a baseline, just as a reference resource to understanding some of the concepts that go into the development of the applications and systems that AI is a part of now.
Yep. So Charles, I was intrigued in your book because obviously there's lots of books that talk about data asset management, driving more intelligent processing, how to improve knowledge worker productivity. But your title, Living Smart with Heart, struck me as very unique because you put into your book very clear messages around renewal. And
Yes.
obviously there's that sustainability life cycle. So you must have given a lot of thought to the title, because being smart, you can, if you don't, so I was curious about the actual story with the heart message. You were trying to communicate something beyond, I think, the usual fanfare. So if you can expand on that.
Yeah. Well, again, the human side. So, I mean, the first chapter is human intelligence. I mean, what I don't agree with today, I mean, granted, you can do a lot of things with AI, but why not use AI to do good? I think AI can be game changing for people all over the planet. And I'm looking at it of all the good things we can do, but it's meant to augment. It's not going to replace human beings. I mean, there's certain functions and activities that might get replaced. But to be honest with you, if you can free up time doing mundane things so you can focus on doing the things that you need to do, why isn't that a good thing? Why isn't that a good pursuit? So essentially, I think that the heart part is the human part. Is that there's so much that we have to continue to learn every day. And as we use technology and we see the impact on technology and people today, it's good and bad. It's basically as information has grown, productivity has actually dropped.
Yeah, it has.
So that's a concern to any executive. And so that means that if you can bring in AI to improve the way people are working, there's more meaning. People have to have meaningful, if you're creating value, that's the real secret. Is if you're creating value, you will find you are happier and healthier and more productive. And so that's essentially, you can be busy, but the question is, are you actually creating value? Are you creating value for yourself? Are you creating value for others and everyone around you? That's very, very important. So that's the heart side that I tried to convey in throughout the book. I mean, so there's the technology.
I think you did a fabulous job, Charles, conveying that message as well. Having done a tremendous amount of research in the last few years around I'd call it it's not just the productivity rates, but the declining happiness of people. And so, to your point, let's make AI, designs that drive responsible AI. Let's make sure it's for good. And I couldn't agree with you more around taking meaningless work away. But I think the other factor is people need to think about that time you take away and how it's going to be redeployed, right? And to augment and where we're going to go, right? And I think those are often the missing pieces, is people not thinking beyond the cost savings, right? Which is always an issue in corporations. Let's move to the second question in terms of, why do you think leadership is struggling to get the right balance in ensuring health, happiness, and productivity, are in balance? Because we definitely do have an imbalance, no question.
Definitely. And it's gotten worse. I mean, the problem, things like smartphones, social media, mass marketing of misinformation. Well, guess what? AI can detect bad information. So, I mean, I don't know how many phishing things I get a day, in your email. I mean, it's just amazing so many ways information's being used to do bad things. I believe that AI can really help mankind do good things. And that we're reaching a point in time where people have to come together and work in concert together. And we only have, limited resources. We have to get smart about what we're doing day in and day out. Everything you do all day, every little thing you do matters. And so I think from an executive standpoint, it's, how can I improve? How can I make my people happier? How can we produce value, but at the same time, improve quality of life? So I've tried to breathe that into the book and give context to that. So that's essentially what happens, is that, think about it. If you're more productive, if your work has more meaning, you're happier, you're healthier, you can sleep at night, you are in a much better state of mind. If you have colleagues that are not doing so well, you need to reach out. I mean, but working together in concert with one another in teams, I think that's what you're going to see, is more and more teams of people coming together to solve problems. And that's what companies will become, is more areas of specialty, and they'll work together with other areas of specialty to bring new things to life, and at the same time, improve the quality of life for people around the world, but also in the corporations, in the communities, and so forth. So why not bring that all together and do two things at once? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. As you know, large companies are very complex organisms, right? And we put everybody into their little boxes at the same time. You still know that if I want to solve a specific problem or find the person with, how many people have this AI skill set on this algorithm, I can't do an immediate search. So I think this next generation with generative AI is very exciting, because the innovative companies will start to take all their existing knowledge, right, and sort of unleash that productivity as well. So we're going to see a lot more creativity going ahead, as people start to think about how they can apply these more advanced AI practices. I couldn't help but think about, when you're talking about happiness, I had to just bring my little things, right? So we have software too that checks on how people's moods are, and hopefully another time I can show you, but also the reasons why. And you can add in other productivity metrics as well that are quite insightful depending on the use case. So I look forward to further conversations. Now, in the book, there's a lot of rich content that's there. But if you had to distill it down to three key takeaway messages that you think are really pragmatic, you'd want them to retain, to think hard about and apply, what would those takeaway messages be for for the book as a teaser to hopefully motivate all of our viewers to pick up the insights that Charles has written on Living Smart?
Well, I'd have to say, again, the foundational knowledge that's in the book has been a lifelong learning process. And I think there's a lot of really core concepts. And so if people understand those and understand how things come together, how things work, that will be very helpful so they can not be afraid of the technology, but embrace it. So one thing I would say to the key takeaways from a corporate standpoint and for people in the corporations is that what you do every day, it really does matter. And that lots of things with all the technology and all the resources and everything available to you, at some point you need to kind of shut it off, turn it off, but also use the technology wisely to do the things that you need to do every day so you can free yourself up for your family, for your friends and colleagues, and so forth. So think about instilling that into a corporation. Well, that's why I say the DNA model of a company, and companies are not going to be able to really create their own. They're going to have to go outside, but it's a starting place. So if you and we could supply that, but that's just the beginning of the work that the corporation is going to have to do. Once you have a model that says, here's all my people, this is what they do all day, this is kind of like what it costs, this is what we are doing now, this is what we could be doing, and what that would look like. So you can have this predictive information that comes out of that DNA model to help you really decide on what you need to do. Where do you start? How do you start with AI? What's the best projects to start first? Well, figure out, the model will help you see where you're efficient and where you're inefficient. Take the biggest area of inefficiency, improve on that. The technologies exist. It's about bringing that capability in, working with the individual people to understand, why is this good for you? And, so you need to answer those questions. People are not just going to adapt something without, you got to answer, what's in it for me? So that's part of the process, is that you need to, start with a baseline and build from there. That's, I think, the biggest takeaway. And that's what's missing in the corporate world today. Once you have that, everything else ties into it. And then everybody can kind of focus in on making the cost savings and impact in the areas that are least efficient, taking those cost savings and applying it to the next and the next and so forth. So it basically gives you your strategy, it gives you your roadmaps, and then you get down to the tactical action plan that you implement on each individual project that you take on. But focus on the ones where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck first, and then don't bop around. Go in and actually solve the problem, and then move forward on to the next problem. And if you stay with that mentality and build that mentality into your culture, that's what that's the takeaway. That's something that companies really need to build today. And post-COVID now, where we're all kind of working out of our houses, and the office environments and everything's changing, it's very, very important to have that trust, build that trust into the organization, where the top is leading, but then the people are implementing, and they're doing it with meaning and value, and they become really happy at what they're doing every day.
So Charles, who do you think's doing this really, really well? Because obviously you're in a privileged position. You're out, consulting, working with other large multinationals. Does anybody have this right from your perspective yet?
I think there's pockets. So like in every corporation, I think you can find a pocket in Microsoft and one in Apple and the big guys, but you can also find it in the smaller organizations. So, when you're large, it's very hard to, make change, but you have to start somewhere, lead by example, take those examples and then expand them throughout the organization.
Yeah.
And I think that, you just see them, there's many. I narrowing in on any
hope.
one.
So there's hope. That's good. That's good to know. There's hope.
I believe there's incredible hope.
Yeah.
I think we've got in fact, to be honest with you, I think this is one of the most interesting, opportunistic times in history. And, being so many people are gloom and doom about what's going on in the world. Well, I actually think that everybody's finally waking up and that the opportunities in front of us are absolutely enormous.
Well, I guess it always starts with, stepping back. You mentioned reflection a lot to enable renewal and to pause in this incredibly attention, deprived world that we live in. And that you and I talked earlier about the blurring realities of everything that's in motion, right? Charles, I would like to thank you for your gracious time today. I'm going to turn it over to Malay for closing comments and who will advise as well in terms of next steps as well for our viewers. But thank you so much, Charles, for the engaging
And thank you,
conversation.
Cindy.
Absolutely. I look forward to more
pleasure.
conversations. I wish we had more time, Malay.
Well, I agree. I wish we had more time, the kind of topic you want to go for an hour at least. But Charles, thank you for the time you've spent with us today, for all the context you gave us prior to this discussion, and for all the coloring you did now. For our viewers, we hope that's something you took away from this as well. Charles's book is available on Amazon, the link to which is on your screen, as are all the other contact links to connect with Charles and continue these discussions on your own. You can also visit livingsmartheart.com for further details, or his website, glbvst.com. With that, we come to a conclusion of our session here today. It's been productive as always, and I thank Charles for that. I thank our audience for all the attention. And of course, Cindy and I are always privileged and honored to have such esteemed guests and be part of such discussions. With that, as a reminder, please do visit saleschoice.com/resources to find all our other webinars, podcasts, white papers, blogs. Cindy writes for Forbes, so you'll find also references to that. And you can also subscribe to our newsletters, of course, where you'll get all of these delivered to your inbox. This particular podcast, this particular recording will be uploaded on in the space soon enough, and you'll be able to find it there going forward. So with that, once again, thank you so much, Charles, for being with us here. We absolutely loved it.
And thank you too. I mean, really a great pleasure to be with both of you and to talk about these important subject matters that we all need to continue to work on.
Well, we hope so. We hope to do so even more in the near future. And with that, we have come to a close. Thank you, everyone. Stay happy and stay productive. Bye-bye.